And a goal for eccentricity, well, it serves the state. I believe, it's bad enough that we're all people to start with. But at least let us be equal under the law. Those pious things.
In your book, one of the most interesting essays, and a theme right through it, is what's happened to the American press and the way we receive information. What do you read yourself? How do you keep informed?
Well, for the last 2 years, I've been reading Aristotle. Go thou and do likewise. I mean, it's good stuff. And he is, I've always been against him because Alexander the Great was his pupil. He was a good pupil, I mean, he failed as a teacher anyway. He was going to teach, he wanted a king. And Alexander was king of Macedon. He wanted a king who would be a great philosopher, leader. Didn't get the right boy. That kid just wanted to fight and have it with everywhere he went. He's picking fights. I don't know what to do with him. Olympias just wasn't on the job as a mother. Alex was a failure for Aristotle, but Aristotle's book, Politics, I highly recommend to all of you. Take it easy. Don't, with the classics, don't jump in and try and read the thing in one night. I mean, it's not Perry Mason. You're not going to get the good of it in one night. Read it slowly. He examined every known republic of the period in which he was living, which was 4th century AD. And he had 100 to choose from. He starts with the island of Crete. I never even knew they had a republic, much less that they had a constitution. So he analyzes them all and analyzes why they failed, every last one, including the Athenian. Of course, he was a child of Athens. Very much wanted to vote for the home team. Couldn't do it. And it was always, at the end, the best gloss I've ever seen on the failure of the American Constitution, which began very early. It began in 1789 in Philadelphia, at the time the thing was written. Benjamin Franklin said 4 kids had been assigned to Franklin to make sure he shut up during the molding of the Constitution, because he was an honest man. He was very sharp. He said what he thought. This is not an American trait, as we all know. And suddenly he was rather too good for the time. But his fellow citizens in Philadelphia, they knew they could rely on old Ben to tell them what he thought. He was a wise old bird. So they had these 4 informants, really, were there, and as he was coming out of the Liberty Hall, I think they call it now, these 4 guys who were trailing him followed him. And they said, well, Doctor, what do you think of the new Constitution? Well, he said it has some fair features, but not many. And it will fail, as all of this sort of thing tends to fail. Why are you such a pessimist? These kids are just wild with excitement over their handiwork. Well, he said, every known constitution, and he bent their ears with Crete, and he bent their ears with Athens, and he just gave them a seminar. As they were desperately trying to get to that place that serves Scrabble. Across the street, I can't stand Scrabble. But there's some good restaurants nearby, near Constitution Hall. And he said, well, every constitution has begun with high hopes from the people who molded it. And every constitution that is known to man of a republic like ours has failed ignominiously. Well, that's very gloomy, Dr. Franklin. Why have they failed? He said, due to the corruption of the people. Thank you very much. He meant you, and he meant me, and he meant the four boys. Not kindly old Ben. But I kept feeling that, from the moment I heard, heck of a job, Brownie. Oh, Jesus, here we go, here we go. Dr. Franklin was right. We have faith. And the major thing, we've lost a city. They weren't that careless in ancient times. They just wouldn't let you lose a city. Particularly one that was a joy to go to. So we lost a city. And we lost our, I must turn to the French, amour propre, our seriousness. If you're going to let a great city go, and a city that brought so much civilization to the United States, you're up the river. And things will go badly for you after that. I thought that was the most evil omen that ever befell us. It was what happened in New Orleans.
Gore Vidal, Tim Rutan, in reviewing your book, said, Gore Vidal is America's foremost man of letters. And one of the interesting essays in your published book was one you wrote in the 1970s when you tore to pieces the 10 bestsellers on the New York Times.
Well, it wasn't kind. It was not kind. It was not a kind piece.
If you would recommend 5 books for people to read today, what would you recommend?
Aristotle. In a very clever niche, since we're into bisexuality nowadays, and I think we should miss Aristotle. Pretty funny girl. I would, listen, pick up on all the things you haven't read. I waited 40 years before I finally could take in Aristotle. I waited till I was 40 before I dared read George Eliot, the greatest novelist in the English language. But I wasn't ready when I was 30. I might have suffered from optimism. Watch out for the optimists, and keep your hand on your wallet.
Another essay that I didn't particularly agree with is where you make the strong point that we really have one party in the United States, not two.
Where did you find the other one?
You will make the choice in November.
Well, I didn't want to vote for poor old Ralph. That would be another choice, rather than the Democrat and Republican parties are just the same. They're dedicated to money, double entry bookkeeping, cheating, particularly the voters, and trying to separate people from their money in the interest of earmarks. When I drop that dreaded name, I can tell who starts to tremble in the audience, and I know I've got an earmarker in front of me.
Yet politics is a place where you have to make choices.
Well, that's the idea. I think our system has turned out to be pretty dreaded and pretty bad. But it's the way we use it. It wasn't, it didn't set out to be bad. Aristotle didn't think the Athenian constitution was a vicious one. He just thought, well, a little goodwill, we can make the damn thing work. But we didn't. It's too profitable. Thomas Jefferson said many wise things. He didn't do many wise things. But he said the wisest things on earth. And one of them, he said, this is when there was constitution making in 1789, and he said, I pity any nation that has a standing army. Well, so do I, and I was born at West Point. And spent 3 years in World War II, and I pity anybody brought up in a military state as we are now. It's bad news.